This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. It's episode 346 of the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm Jamie Bogner, and I am again in Arizona, the greater Phoenix area. I have to call it greater Phoenix area. We're actually in Mesa today, but we're at 12 West Brewing, and joining me for this episode are Justin Gullickson, head brewer, co-owner for 12 West, and Andrew Cooper, assistant brewer. Welcome to the podcast, Gully.
Hello.
Just so people can associate your voice.
Yeah.
And Andrew?
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here.
This is one of the wildest commercial breweries that I think I have ever visited, in the strangest, well, I shouldn't say strange, in the kind of coolest of lifestyle ways.
You could say that.
This is a commercial brewery, but it's in the former extended garage. When we say extended garage, this is like, this used to be a high-end car garage.
Yeah, 6,000 square foot garage.
Yeah. Used to be filled with some fancy cars, and and then your owner Brian decided to get started and open a brewery, and they did it right here in the backyard of the house. There is a swimming pool right here in view of us. There's a half pipe ramp, past that. There is dirt tracks for bikes, further out there. Like it is kind of a action sports lifestyle.
Yeah, that's
brewery.
definitely a little bit of the idea. A little extreme, a little out there.
Yeah. But pretty awesome that you can walk out the door from the brew house and then hop right into the swimming pool.
Yeah, it definitely helps in the Arizona summer.
Yeah, fantastic. I would love to live here. You can make your own beer, and then you've got all.
So would we. We would love to live here too, but
but you get to work here. You work here instead. Anyway, we're here primarily because Radial Spines, the West Coast Pils from 12 West, was one of our beers of the year in 2023. Scored a 98 with our blind judges, and of course, everyone knows how much we love hoppy pils these days. And you guys crushed it, knocked it out of the park with this beer. And of course, for subscribers to Craft Beer and Brewing, the recipe for Radial Spines is one that you all shared with us, and is in that issue of the magazine. So if you are a subscriber, go back, check that out in the issue itself. If you're not a subscriber, you can gain access to all of our back issues by becoming a subscriber, and then you can check out that recipe yourself. Shameless plug. Maybe it's not so shameless of a plug there. But anyway, super impressed with the beers that you all have been making over the years. Not just Radial Spines, but like the Stratodactyl Hoppy Lager, which scored a 95. Zona Pils scored a 94 with our blind judges. But even like hazy IPA like Super Beaker scored a 93. And so you guys are doing really well across. And I think there's other 90s plus or 90 plus scores for things like Front Side with Peach and some others that are in there too. So lots of consistency and quality, whether it's lager or whether it's ales. And so that's why I'm out here. We're going to have a conversation. So we're going to talk about your approach to brewing hoppy lager, and maybe we'll also talk about other hoppy beers too, just because people like those things.
We like hops.
Yeah. Let's do that. But before that, at G&D Chillers, they always strive to build great chillers. Partner with them as you build great beer. Kevin Toger from Bearded Iris says, G&D Chillers have been a valuable partner throughout our growth. They build high-quality equipment and know their machines extremely well. Most importantly, their customer service is best in class, which is a huge value add to our internal teams that manage these critical support systems, end quote. Choose G&D Chillers on your next expansion or brewery startup and receive 1 free year of remote control and monitoring of your new G&D chiller. And turnkey brewery systems, production line design services, retrofitting processing systems. ProBrew can do all of this and more with any brewery, old or new, small or large. With an expansive list of breweries already served, their engineering team prides itself on providing a true turnkey solution built for your entire production line that can be easily customized to fit your operation. For more information, fill out their contact form at www.probrew.com or email contactus@probrew.com to learn exactly how they can take your operations to the next level. ProBrew, brew your beer. Also, Old Orchard has supplied flavored craft juice concentrate blends to over 46 states for the production of fruit-forward beer, cider, seltzer, wine, spirits, and more. By partnering with some of the biggest names in the craft brewing landscape, Old Orchard has become a go-to source of fruit-forward ingredients. To learn more and request your free samples, head on over to oldorchard.com/brewer. All right, Gully, we kick it off with a little bit of history and background. What's yours? And then also tell us the broader 12 West history.
So I guess I kind of fell in love with craft beer working at a little beer bar in Austin called Bangers Sausage.
Oh, man. Yeah, I've been to Bangers.
Yeah, it's a good spot. I think they're up to 202 draft beers, but when I was there was only 101, but got into that.
That's way too many, by the way.
It is way too many.
Yeah, no beer bar needs that many taps.
Yeah, working there was not the funnest, but I did fall in love with beer. Ended up moving back out to Arizona. Two of my best friends were brewers at Arizona Wilderness. Ended up serving there, bartending. Kind of moved my way up, worked there for about 3 years, and then one of the founders of 12 West kind of recruited me over, came over here, and 7 years later, I'm still here. Well, March will be 7 years for me. 12 West has been open about 7.5 years. We opened November of 2016. So I started about 5 months after we opened, and I've moved up from the keg washer and had a couple other brewers in front of me, learned from them, and then now I'm the head brewer or the whatever, wear a lot of hats around here guy.
Here you are. And so what was the idea behind 12 West originally? I mean, 5 months in, it's like you're pretty much, that's founding time right there.
Yeah, pretty much. I know Brian wanted to start a brewery, and he met up with Noel, the other original founder, and they just, started coming up with recipes, kind of more homebrewing on a 1-barrel system here and experimenting. And then by the time I got here, it was about at the system that we're on now. I actually never brewed on the small system. But yeah, I think they just kind of...
So in 5 months, they went from a 1-barrel system to a 10-barrel, right?
Yeah, so they moved up pretty quickly.
This is, by the way, the most amazing homebrew setup that I have ever seen, and that you have an entire commercial brewery at the back of this house.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I wish more people could come and check it out. I wish it wasn't so closed off. I mean, sometimes that's nice, but at the same time, it's wish it wasn't so closed off so people could come check out how kind of cool it is out here.
Right. I once thought Keith Villa of Saria Beverage and the founder, the guy that made Blue Moon, he's got a homebrew setup that I thought, similar kind of thing, building in the back of his house, that I thought was the best homebrew setup that I had ever seen until I saw this brewery.
We'll take it. We'll take that.
Yeah, this is by far the best home brewery.
We'll take it.
Yeah, biggest home brewery too.
Right. Yeah, so it's just kind of just grown over the years, and yeah.
Cool. When what's in the beer focus? Obviously, you start a brewery, it's like we want to make great beer, but you also generally have a point of view, and and so what defines the beers that you all make and release?
I think we like to make just a lot of clean, easy drinking, hoppier leaning beers. We definitely try to make all styles to try to, make all of our guests happy,
Sure.
But we definitely lean more American or English style, mix in some other stuff occasionally, but it's generally our wheelhouse is those hoppier pale ales to lagers. We definitely really enjoy brewing lagers and just letting them hang out and, seeing what happens in a couple months.
Sure. And you do have tap rooms, there's a public-facing side of the brewery, too.
Yeah, we have 2 tap rooms, one in Gilbert and then one in downtown Mesa at 12 West Main Street, where the namesake comes from.
Makes sense. Andrew, what's your background?
I worked in the restaurant industry for years and years, since I was before I was 20, and then I was kind of tired of being upper management in restaurants and went to BJ's. Started at the bottom, server, bartender, and I ended up being the person to converse with for the head brewer at the time, who had taken over for Derek Osborne of Pedal House. He had just left as I had come in, and he would talk to me about beer, and I didn't like beer at the time, but I thought the process was cool. And he talked to me during my morning bartender shifts, and I came in on one Saturday, and we made a stout. That was the first beer. It was Tatanka Stout that I ever made, helped to make. And I came home that night and talked to my wife's ear off about everything I learned. And it became my next hyperfixation. And I said, hey, I can make less money, but I'll be so much more happy. And she said, yeah, do it. No, you're miserable as a front-facing employee, so that'd be great. And from there, I went from keg washer to assistant brewer to brewing the majority of the time. And then from there, I kind of learned about as much as I could from that place. And I was, at the time, looking for an exit passively, and I actually got approached by the previous, well, one of the previous co-founders, Noel. He approached me out of nowhere. I didn't even reach out. And this 12 West at the time was my favorite brewery. I had finally gotten into beer a year after learning how to make it. I didn't like beer the first year of making beer.
Interesting.
I didn't like the taste of it at all, but it was fun to do. So why not?
Okay.
And
the reluctant brewer.
yeah, exactly. So I'd taste a beer and go, that tastes the way it should, but I hate it. So, but he approached me and I talked to my wife and I said, hey, I'll take a slight pay cut again, but I'll be happier. And
how much beer do you all make out of this garage?
The last couple of years we've done about 1,600 barrels. 1 year we did 2,000, so that's kind of the range of 16 to 2,000.
And you do have a full-on packaging line. You do you put some beer out into local distribution then, or
yeah, Total Wine is probably our biggest account that way. Our tap rooms also go through quite a bit of cans, packaged stuff.
Of course.
But yeah, we have quite a few other local liquor stores, those kind of places. Always looking for more. But yeah, at this point, Total Wine is definitely the one that helps us out.
Like I said, craziest homebrew anywhere if you're producing 1,600 to 2,000 barrels a year out of the brewery. Anyway, let's talk about how you design, think about, and brew some of these hoppy lagers, and then of course hop forward IPAs and whatnot too. Before we do that, streamline efficiency with Omega Yeast's Diacetyl Knockout series. The DKO series is comprised of 8 familiar yeast strains engineered to knock out the formation of diacetyl before it starts. The strains you know now better, available now for made-to-order pitchables at any volume. Contact Omega Yeast today at omegayeast.com. Also, ABS Commercial has been a full-service brewery outfitter for over 10 years. They are proud to offer brew houses, tanks, keg washers, and preventative maintenance parts to brewers across the country, as well as equipment for distilling, cider making, wine making, and more. They know the ins and outs of the brewing and installation process and can design the perfect setup for you. Whether you're just starting out or looking to expand, contact them today at sales@abs-commercial.com to discuss your customized brewery needs. ABS Commercial, we are brewers. And are you planning a brewery, considering the purchase of an existing brewery, or are you working in the industry and kicking around the idea of realizing your own brewery vision? If any of these apply, go to breweryworkshop.com right now. Check out our upcoming Brewery Accelerator, March 24th through 27th in Austin, Texas. Some of our favorite award-winning brewers are joining us to help share their knowledge you need, like Marcus Baskerville of Weathered Souls, Joe Morfeld of Pine House, and Neil Fisher of Weldworks. Of course, I'll be there moderating panels, meeting with folks, and everything else too. This will be the only Brewery Accelerator event in 2024, so don't wait. Secure your spot now at breweryworkshop.com. I know as we're recording this, there are only a couple of tickets left, so if you're interested, do it now. All right. As you guys think about beers, let's talk about brewing itself now, Gully. Whether it's a beer like Radial Spines didn't exist when you joined the brewery. It's something that you all had to develop as a creative process. Talk to me about what that creative process looks like for you. You had Zona Pils, pretty kind of an existing pilsner that people already had some attachment to. How did you go about thinking about brewing a beer like Radial Spines, where you're going to amp that hopping up, and create this West Coast Pilsner approach? Where does the creative piece start?
Well, I think realistically, the creative part of that is we were just kind of watching one of the awards, GABF, or one of them, and saw somebody who had won for a hoppy lager, and we started checking it out and saw Citra Mosaic, and we're like, wait, we have that, and we can make, I bet we can make a pretty good. We had already been making some hoppy lagers, but
yeah,
why not try, the two staples, and at this point, or two of the staples in, brewing. So it was that was realistically the start of how the recipe was, or, wanting to brew the recipe was,
right.
Well, wait, that sounds pretty cool. Like, I bet we could do something kind of cool with that. Like,
let's Citra Mosaic. Yeah.
Let's make a little West Coast, So then it was like, all right, well, we can do this. And I think we've only done about 3 batches of it, so we're still kind of learning when we're doing it. And at the first batch, there wasn't really as many IPLs or examples out there that we could try.
You didn't just call it an IPL, did you? Damn it! You did.
A hoppy,
okay, I'll forgive
a hoppy
you for
lager.
that.
Sorry,
hoppy lager. Okay.
I was going with the older term, not the new.
we're not going to pay credence to that old school folks. So it's just an IPL. Like, no. Anyway, sorry for distracting you. On that one.
So realistically, that's kind of just where it started. Just kind of seeing what we could do with some fun hops, and then
That seems so simple there. So you have this inspiration of, hey, wait a second, we could do it this way. How did you start thinking about a recipe? How did you start building a recipe? Did you just build it off of your same basic Pils recipe? I mean, I imagine it's almost all Pilsner malt, if not 100%.
There's a little bit more to this one. This one, we did kind of start with our basic Pils recipe and then just add a little bit. This one's about 70% Wireman Premium Pils, 20% white wheat, and then a little bit of Carafoam, and then a little bit of Munich. So it's got a little bit more to it than just, like, Zona's just 100% Czech Saws and Wireman Premium Pils.
Yeah.
So a little more going on than that, but yeah, it was just kind of a start with the base.
Well, talk to me about the reasoning behind that. Like, how did you start? Now you're adding wheat into a West Coast Pils. Well, we're definitely moving into this kind of hybrid lager, IPA territory at that point.
Yeah, I think that was kind of just the thought process, was trying to figure out how to blend, like, say, our West Coast IPA with Zona, and see how to get a kind of happy, median. With our West Coast lager back then, we were using some Cara malt. So instead of using Cara malt, we went with Munich. So still gave it a little bit of malt, but not as caramel forward. So
yeah,
I think that was a lot of the thinking behind that, and then just trying to give it some head retention, nice fluffy white,
sure.
Head, so
got to look good in the glass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And how much of this is like driven by the hop load that you're projecting for this?
That's a good question.
It sounds like with the kind of wheat component that you're adding to it, having some additional feeling of body to it was somewhat important.
Yeah.
In order to just kind of handle all of these additional hops.
Yeah, we didn't want to go, too crazy with the hops. They're all Whirlpool Edition hops, but we definitely wanted it to have more mouthfeel than just, say, a real, light lager.
Right. It definitely fits this space that we see for West Coast West Coast Pilsner or, cold pale ale. I mean, there's this interesting crossover between those things. Although this one, we'll be honest, it's the morning, but we're drinking one right now just so I can make sure that I'm on top of what we're talking about. And there still is this kind of, maybe a sulfury brightness to it that definitely makes it a different feeling beer than, say, a West Coast pale ale of some sort.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we try to bung it early enough so that we can try to hold on to a little bit of that, sulfur.
All right, you're skipping ahead on me right now. Where we're way further back in the linear process here, and I have to, as everyone who listens to the podcast knows, I'm slavishly attached to following our linear process. No, we'll get back to that in a minute. And just simply to say that as we're thinking about it conceptually, even though there is crossover there, that this definitely does not taste like a West Coast pale ale. It definitely has that lager, that Pilsner characteristic to it that you're looking for. So why something like this with Citra and Mosaic, why Wireman premium Pils? That seems like an expensive ingredient selection for something that's going to get bowled over, with this kind of hop load. Or is it just something that you keep in for your Pilsner?
Yeah, realistically, Wireman Premium Pils is basically our in-house, base malt. So we use that for most everything. We'll order specialty malt for some things, two-row and whatever we need. But for the most part, it's just order pallets of Premium Pils, and then
that's what you got.
Yeah, that's what we got.
Sure. How about the wheat? Is there anything to it, or there's just some wheat variety, a certain wheat variety that you like?
We basically just use the raw white wheat.
Yeah. Cool. So, and then let's talk about anything to the mash on this one. It looks like you all are not necessarily set up for crazy lager mash strategies on this brew house here. How does that process then work for you?
So the mash for us, we actually somewhat recently disconnected our mash tun from the steam jackets. We have a very interesting setup. We can't blend water like even the previous brewery I worked at. So anytime we need it specific temperature for mash. We have to heat the entire hot liquor tank to the specific temperature we need, and hold it there and hope it doesn't go up or down during the mash in, which 99 out of 100 times it sticks because we've used it so many times that we just know. But yeah, so with radial, it's slightly lower, but not so dry, right? I mean, it's not like Zona level.
Mash temp is 150.
Okay, so yeah, so it's on the lower end for us for sure. But that's just hoping that we get a little bit of that kind of crisp dryness from all the converted sugars during mash, and as much lager characteristic from the malt that we can, so it's not cloyingly sweet. I mean, there are definitely routes you can take to counteract that, but we just want to brew as close of a just straight lager base that happens to have extra hop character to it, and it can stand up to it. So we're not having to reinvent the wheel.
So definitely the single infusion lager camp right here. We've talked to lots of brewers that are doing it this way, and as much as a step mash or decoction, as much as Joe Stang, our managing or now executive editor, might want to argue for the necessity of it, it's also awesome and fascinating to see folks that are making great lagers without going through that process, and lots of medal-winning brewers are doing that too. So single infusion mash process. Where do you go from there? Anything about the way that you finish from sparging, runoff, and then the next step of the brew process?
So I mean, for us, because this is a smaller amount of malt, with ours, it's not as small amount as like Zona. So Zona fills, if the average beer we make, like say above 6%, fills about half of our mash tun with grain. Zona fills like a third. This one is somewhere in between, even though it is only a 5-ish% beer. It doesn't necessitate any extra steps for us, like with like with one of our IPAs, where it's just an insane amount of grain in there, almost overflowing. But usually for us, it's all about timing and looks for our brew house because of how basic it was made for us. And, we just kind of look and go, all right, I can almost see the grain bed. Give it 5 more minutes as long as it doesn't get stuck, and then start sparge. And, for us, sparge is just hitting hot liquor through a spray ball. We don't have sparge spray nozzles like some brew houses do. But for us, it's, start it hard. Hopefully we can kind of disturb a little bit of the grain bed on top, and then slow it real down until we're barely just kind of trickling in to where it's almost counteracting the lauter speed. And then for lauter, for us, we start it. For us, it's, it's all numbers that mean nothing to anybody without our brew house. But, we start at 14 hertz out of 50 for our pump for lauter. And then as the head pressure increases in the kettle, it fills the grant, which our grant is a keg with the top cut off. It's
making us sound fancy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I'm not trying to make anybody jealous. But yeah, so as the...
what would make people jealous? Mentioning that you have an in-house sanitary welder that can just fabricate all of this stuff for you because of the other businesses that are...
Yeah, CJ is nice to have around.
Yeah, we have... he made that for us. All of our blow-off buckets are...
You were trying not to brag, but there we go.
All of our blow-off buckets are slim kegs that we cut the tops off of and cleaned up. But yeah, so lauter for us, on average, hour 45... 2 hours, depending. Lately, we've been going a little over, but we're still kind of fine tuning a mill that we've had since the beginning, whose manufacturer went out of business. I want to say 7 minutes after they sold us the mill. So, so we just kind of give it our own TLC, and it's pretty finicky. Like, everybody's brew house, unless they got like a day one BrauCon or Premier or something that, and even then those I'm sure come with their own host of problems because it's human error. I mean, that's just kind of how it works.
Sure.
But yeah, we'll fill, and then our kettle will we actually also, when we fill our kettle, we eyeball it. We've gotten real good with having brewed with our measurements of flow meter for so long. We know exactly when something is. All right, we've gotten 1,660 liters. That's at this part on the spray ball. And we knock out almost exactly 12 barrels every single time. And we've gotten pretty decent at looking at, a sight glass on a bright tank and going, oh, cool. Like 19 and a half barrels into that one. That's awesome. So that's a good yield, just kind of go from there.
Sure. Well, on the, then you kick into hot side there. What's hopping in in radial spines and a West Coast pills look like for you?
We took it pretty easy. We try to keep recipes as easy. They're brewer built recipes. They're not too difficult generally, but with this one we just did 2 pounds of Cryo Citra and 2 pounds of Cryo Mosaic, all in the whirlpool.
All in the whirlpool. So no other bittering then.
No, didn't. We don't really.
You're gonna get enough alpha from those just in a whirlpool.
Right. It's at about 41 IBUs. On through Beersmith is what it tells me. But
sure.
I haven't had it tested, but that's what it tells me is it about, and I believe it. Close enough.
I believe it too, and but why? So why Cryo and why push it all into the whirlpool? I mean, obviously once you're there, and then obviously whirlpool temperature impacts that kind of isomerization. Like it's maybe a little less firm in terms of the exact bitterness, but.
Yeah, I think we just kind of wanted it to be a little softer, a little bit more flavor forward as opposed to just bitterness, get that aroma out of it. We do use probably 90% cryo hops here. A lot of our contracts are just our cryo. We have contracts for Cryo, Amarillo, Citra, and Mosaic. So that is just something that we use a lot of. We do quite a bit of extensive.
Why is that? Why do you find that Cryo across all of your hop forward beers is the way that you want to go?
I think we've just been happy with, obviously not having so much loss is the big thing. With a beer like our Pilsner, we have to use a whole bag of Czech saws because it's at like 1.8 alpha.
Right.
And, we're getting 11 IBUs out of it or whatever it is. So that, I think that definitely helps. And we haven't seen any haven't received any negative feedback from using Cryo instead of T90s, or haven't seen any big differences.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest reason why we've just kind of stuck with Cryo and
efficiency on a small brew house.
Yeah,
makes sense. And then in terms of flavor and intensity, you say you don't notice any difference. Are there any positives? No negatives is a good thing, but are there any positives?
I think on this it helps. Just really packing it in the whirlpool. With all that with the Cryo. But yeah, I haven't really had any other feedback too much from, we've only done it a few times now, so I don't exactly have, unfortunately, any other.
That's fair. In thinking about whirlpool process, whether it's West Coast Pilsner or a hazy IPA, using Cryo in that kind of capacity. Are you getting the full, kind of extraction and impact that you expect? It's a concentrated hop product, and are there any things that you do in that kind of whirlpool process to make sure that you're getting from that concentrated hop product what you're hoping to get from it?
I guess we've just not really anything specific.
Yeah.
We've kind of just ran it a few times. The more that we talk about it, and the more that I listen to podcasts and stuff, the more I want to use flowables and try to mess with some stuff, but. Kind of like what we were talking about before was we're also very busy, small staff, and it's a lot of time if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing. So it's don't change anything too much and kind of run with it. But there is the more that I listen to this and do these kind of things, the more I do. I want to make like a hoppy beer tomorrow just because it seems fun, but just
Yeah. Sorry if we don't want to ruin the processes that are working for you now by opening up this other Pandora's box. When it comes to whirlpool, do you adjust the temperature based on the goal for bitterness? Imagine a hazy IPA. thinking about it, I might lower a whirlpool temperature for that versus something like this radial spines. I might, whirlpool a little bit warmer. Or if you don't really have the ability to change that temperature,
So we
then
do.
you may just
We do, but not really. I mean, it is just a 2-vessel brew house. We can, recirculate through the heat exchanger and get the temp down.
Right,
I mean,
right.
it does take a little while. We do generally do that with our hazies. But yeah, we didn't with any of the hoppy lagers or with radial. We kind of wanted that actual punch. It seems like we get about 204 is the average temp for whirlpool and rest.
Yeah.
So we still get a pretty good extraction, pretty good, high temp out of it.
So it is going to grab some IBUs, especially at that temperature. Yeah, or at least for a while. And I imagine drops a little bit, as you're going through the whole process. Right. How long do you whirlpool for then?
So we spin it for 10 minutes and then let it rest for 25. And then it takes about 25 minutes for us to knock out as well. So include that time. But
Sure. Where do you go from there? Now we pop into fermentation, and now all the fun parts of lager brewing come into play here. And should mention you're fermenting in cylindrical conicals. Where do you in terms of yeast choice, what do you use for your lagers?
again, we try to keep it simple. We use a lot of USO5 for our ales, and then 3470 for pretty much all of our lagers. Every once in a while, we'll use some specialty yeast, some Augustiner or something. But yeah, we usually pretty much just keep it 3470, keep it simple, bricks, and use
All right. So what's the fermentation process then look like?
So it's usually with our lagers. It's usually 2 turns. We kind of overpitch the first one, and then brew
2 turns in one day.
2 turns, 2 days. Over.
2 turns in 2 days. We've got the Drauflaus in there. Yes.
Yeah.
It's my new favorite term. All thanks to Vinny for putting that one in my head.
Right.
I can't get it out now.
So we let it just kind of overpitch a little bit for the single batch at first, and then let it go overnight, and then brew another batch into it the next day. Mm-hmm. Generally let it ferment at about 52 for 5 or 6.
The 2-day process is driven by the volume needs just for sales purposes then?
Yeah. We do have a couple 30-barrel tanks that we'll triple batch into 2 in one day, and then a single batch the following day.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just we don't have enough cold water in here. In Arizona, it takes a long time to get that water cold. So a lot of times it's just necessity that we have to do in back-to-back days.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So fermented about 52 for 5 or 6 days. Hopefully boosted to 60 to 62.
So you put a single pitch of yeast then in with the first batch the first day, and then that's enough yeast it grows up over the night, and by the time you load the second batch.
Yeah, very little oxygen the second day, and then just basically just enough to kind of push it out. And,
normal amount of oxygen first day then? Okay, just for that.
Yeah. And then just let it sit get it up to about 60 for hopefully another 5 or 6 days, and then set a timer for
up
6
to 60.
Yeah.
Why do you talk to me about that?
Well, just
what's your normal fermentation temperature? And this is all I imagine in the recipe that we have in the magazine, and so I don't know why I'm making sure that we have all of these details out there, but
make sure we're not
everyone
liars.
should double check by checking that recipe in the magazine.
I hope I'm right. So we ferment it at 52, through the fermentation, then hopefully get it up to about 60 to get through a diacetyl rest. And then bung it.
Yeah.
Go from there.
That seems like a kind of a long time for a diacetyl rest.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but at the same time, it's worked so far, and it's kind of just been, again, one of those things where it's just like, let it go. And
so 5 or 6 days, and then that kind of long. I mean, it almost. That is different. That normally we might have a longer cold fermentation and then a shorter diacetyl rest.
Yeah. Sometimes they get up to a week of each, a week at colder and then a week up at diacetyl, or getting to diacetyl. It rarely ever gets up
unless
to
it's
that.
summer. It's a degree or two
okay.
under without a heater.
It just slowly rises up there. Sure.
And then just crash it for 6 weeks. Hopefully bung it and forget about it for 6 weeks.
Well, somehow we just missed the dry hop process in there, though, because we're talking about West Coast Pilsner. Like, there's definitely a dry hop in there. When does that figure into this?
Just about a week before we transfer it.
Yeah.
So we just
it'll get 5 days of hop on beer contact, and
5 days.
5 days, yeah. That's usually our dry hop time, 5 to 7, depending on the beer.
Yeah.
If we're doing like a split or a double dry hop, we'll do a smaller charge. Maybe 7 days in, and then a larger charge 7 days away, and then 5 days away from transfer. And then with the lager, it's 5 days is fine. Especially the colder temp, it could stand longer. But we've noticed any beers that we give too much time and too much volume of hop on beer, it gets a little vegetal, a little burn sensation, that kind of hop creep. So we've done what we can to avoid that. There are beers that we've had that we've made that just aren't as pleasant, and we never really hear much as far as negative, oh, this one burned me, whatever.
Yeah,
but we notice it, and that's kind of where our heads stay is, oh crap, everybody's gonna hate our beer.
Sure.
Let's cut that back. But
so you're mentioning before transfer, then if you are also bunging your tanks, then is this dry hopping happening before this process, or is it happening then when the beer now has some carbonation in it?
I guess it kind of has a little bit of carbonation in it, but we do unbung it for a couple days before we'll dry hop it, and then let any of that carbonation hopefully creep out.
Just thinking about like hot geysers and whatnot. And so then what temperature is this then happening at for the dry hopping process?
It's actually getting dry hopped at 35.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's all the way fully crashed, and
Citra Mosaic dry hop at 35. Yikes.
It's weird around here,
Yeah. And I imagine, and also at that temperature, you're not necessarily going to get hop creep and additional fermentation activity. So, and of course, if it's post crash, then your yeast is pretty much out of solution before you're doing that too. Okay.
Yeah, we dropped it out hopefully weeks ago. Dropped the yeast off weeks ago, and then.
Yeah. All right. So now I fully understand. Thanks for bearing with me. As I try to track through that process.
Yeah, and that's a cryo hops also about 2 pounds per barrel. So nothing
cryo
too crazy.
Hops at 35 degrees. Okay.
Again, we have them, so might as well use them.
You're like fighting your efficiency in so many different ways here. Like we're going to make it really under efficient by doing it cold and then crank it up with cryo hops.
Yeah, it's balance.
Okay. That's a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Where's it go from there?
I mean, realistically, that's about it.
Finish it off and carb it up then, or finish the carb.
Throw a little biofine in it, and let it sit in a bright tank until it's needed, and then carb it up and package it.
Yeah, cool. Usually I'll transfer it. I'll transfer onto a liter per 10 barrels of expected product of biofine, and then 24, 48 hours is usually enough time for it to clarify enough. Anything like a hoppy lager or something that gets a little extra to it that wouldn't normally takes a little longer to clarify. But I mean, with radial compared to like Zona, where it doesn't get a dry hop, Zona is going to be clearer sooner, but it has a comparable taste to it, where Zona tastes the way it should, radial tastes the way it should. Radial just takes like 20% longer to clarify, but
Sure.
I've not heard a complaint yet. So, so that, and this is, newer territory. I mean, hoppy lager, not a lot of people are, oh, this is supposed to be clear. This needs a little haze. It's not like the 80s and 90s where, this is what it has to be. It has to be this SRM, this clarity, this IBUs. So
you guys can just make up the rules as you go along.
Exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, you just heard what we do for the beer.
Yeah. So. It's all eyeballing and,
We're just trying to have fun. If we're not having fun, then it's not really.
Yeah. It's the beautiful part at the formation of new beer styles as things start coming together, where anything is possible, and it's not about rules following. It's simply about where could we take this, or we have a vague idea, and then like, hey, what if we did this and in this other way, or we're just going to find our own process around it, and that's it's the beauty of the creativity the brewers bring to all of this. That it's not simply trying to brew to some like Platonic standard for what this could be. It's exploring and finding out where the options are and how we can make these different, interesting, and good. So, cool. How do you think about the flavor of it? Citra Mosaic, it definitely doesn't have the kind of fruitiness necessarily that we might get out of Citra Mosaic within, more of an ale fermentation, or that kind of hazy IPA thing. But there's a little bit of, of that in there. It just also has, more of that, more. And I assume that cold dry hop and some of that just bring out a little more of the herbal character of those hops with, just this little glimpse of fruitiness in there.
Yeah. I think again we kind of just wanted to keep it easy drinking, just very crushable, something that you'd want another sip of, so it wasn't going to go too far in any direction. Didn't want it to be too citrusy or too floral. It's just kind of have enough of everything to where it's like, oh wow, that's kind of cool. I want another sip.
Yeah, to your hazy IPA fans that have an idea of what Citra and Mosaic taste like, how do they respond to this? Because it definitely, feels like a different beer.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they associate them together.
Okay, fair enough. It's not a big part of the marketing strategy.
Yeah, no, we haven't leaned into that too hard.
That's fair. Well, let's pivot. Let's talk about IPA now for a minute. Before we do that, SS Brewtech was founded by a group of home and craft beer brewers dedicated to bringing an engineering-first approach to brewery equipment. SS brewhouses are used to formulate new beer recipes at some of the world's greatest breweries and are the cornerstone of many local breweries. To learn more about SS Brewtech's innovation list, head on over to ssbrewtech.com. Also, did you know your water can change the flavor profile of your beer? Water is the number one ingredient, after all, and uswatersystems.com knows just how to treat it. uswatersystems.com has been at the forefront of the craft brewing industry and created American-made water treatment systems with brewers in mind. Whether you're a hobbyist or a pro, head on over to uswatersystems.com to learn more, because great beer starts here. Let's talk about IPA. Golly, as you guys are, you make West Coast IPA, you make or West Coast style IPA. You're not really on a coast here, but close enough. I mean, Arizona, it's kind of like California East, right?
Little brother, we wish.
Yeah, close enough. And a lot of that Southern California beer actually makes it out here to Arizona too. So, but you also make hazy IPA and do pretty well with that. Do you have a kind of overarching IPA philosophy or some buckets that you like making IPA within?
I mean, we definitely enjoy making the more, West Coast style leaning IPAs, pale ales, that kind of stuff. We really like experimenting with whatever hops we can get our hands on. We have a lot of, contracts like we were mentioning, but we do like to try to mix them up, see, again, just kind of see what other people have done, make sure that it hasn't had really bad feedback by missing Cashmere and Cascade or some, just make sure that somebody else hasn't tested this out and found out that it doesn't work. But yeah, we've kind of just...
you check the bad Untapped ratings
exactly.
from... okay. Yeah. Well, it's again, it's the negative selection process, not... Yeah.
So yeah, I think we just like to kind of have fun with it, keep it, again, just keep them clean, keep them drinkable. Just...
Well, walk me through. Say you're going to develop a new West Coast IPA or some variation on one of your existing kind of core IPAs. How do you start that process? What is IPA? How do you build an IPA recipe then?
With a lot of them,
let's talk about it in the West Coast context,
right?
Instead of the hazy.
I think with a lot of them, we just kind of start with base recipes that we know have worked for us in the past. Sticking with that environment, premium pills. We've kicked out
premium pills even in the IPA space.
Yeah, pretty much everything. I would say probably 90% of our beers at this point are premium pills.
Yeah,
I mean they lowered the cost by 10 cents the other recently, so it's really worth it out.
It's basically free now. So.
So
but it also gives you that kind of light Pilsner color,
exactly,
and I guess
really hopefully lets the hops shine through. I mean, obviously we want a little bit of malt backbone to balance things, but for the most part, we really want to let the hops, be at the forefront and not let the malt get in the way.
Sure.
So yeah, just try to keep it light, premium pills, some white wheat, maybe some carafoam. And then
what kind of percentages for wheat? Are you still in the 20% range or?
Yeah, probably maybe less than that. It might be the 15 kind of percent range for those.
Just enough to give it a little bit of softness and a little bit more body.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mash those at about 152, and then kind of just with the hops, we kind of just hopefully that we can keep it kind of a medium body on the the grain. But yeah, hops we kind of just like to mess around with, see what we have, what we can play, or what we have done, what we haven't done. Just kind of go from there.
What are some of your favorites then on the hop side? Hop side, that's what I said.
I think Citra is still probably just the easy go-to. Strata's another big favorite around here. Belma, I would say, is one of, I really like Belma. I like that, strawberry, melon. Yeah. So I'm a big fan. We're a big fan of melon.
How do you use Belma?
We use it in a few of our beers. We use Belma and Mosaic in quite a few, Belma Nelson and quite a few other ones. Yeah. So I think it kind of lends well with other hops.
Equal balance, or does it have a...
Usually, yeah. There are times where we'll tweak it. Like, I mean, if ever I write one of my weird convoluted recipes, it will kind of stagger everything as it goes. But for the most part...
What do you mean by
that? I'll usually have one hop. It'll kind of almost be like an overlapping... I don't know how to describe it, but basically I'll have like a bittering hop for an IPA that's pretty neutral. I'm not worried about, something that we have extra of or is just high alpha and not worried about it. Then I'll have something that's more late hot addition, maybe equal parts, if not slightly higher of one for Whirlpool, and then possibly higher concentration of one or the other that didn't get as much flavor for the dry hop. But,
that's interesting. So rather than just 50-50 all the way along, you push some up here and some down there.
And it depends. I mean, for me, let me see if I can find it. Like I said, I enjoy writing weird, convoluted recipes.
Just to make it harder on yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, okay. Myself and sometimes him, although any of the weird ones I write, I usually have to brew because I make it a little difficult. So I mean, the only real like bigger name recipe that I've written it's a hazy IPA. I tried to make it very much like Captain Crunch berries. Without using any cereal, right. Trying to do like a kind of gimmicky hype beer without a bunch of adjunct. I used flaked oats, flaked corn, milk sugar, some lactose, and then golden naked oats, carafoam, and then 2-row base. We called it Lieutenant Chomp. But it's got Strata, Belma, Cryo Mosaic, and I believe we added Cryo Amarillo. Just anything I could find with berry as the characteristic. That one actually is pretty much 50-50.
And you work off of the descriptors? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. I kind of go off of those and go, all right, this one, if you add...
Do you find that those actually align with your sensory from your hops, actual hops that you have?
For the most part, yes. There have been some that have definitely been a little misleading in description, or, it could possibly be that I've just used them in a way that our brew house isn't capable, or I just didn't use them the right way they needed to be. But yeah, I mean, I do tend to write recipes where I can get as much out of a hop as possible while not releasing too many of its quote unquote negative characteristics.
Sure.
If a hop is piney and berry and I'm trying to make a berry flavored beer, I don't want that pine coming out.
How do you adjust and manipulate that then in the brew itself?
I mean, when I'm tweaking a recipe, I usually equate that kind of isomerization and heat toward unlocking more. And so usually a Whirlpool addition will be enough, and especially at a lower temperature. For us, like, for example, for this one, the Whirlpool temp average was 185. And so we Whirlpooled it till it got down to the Celsius conversion, but 185F in the Whirlpool, and then throwing hops in, which then that brings that average total to what I need it to be. And that one did have the tiniest bit of hop creep, but that was still, I was pretty early in writing recipes, and I'm sure the next time we do it, I'm gonna do a little more homework and try and tweak it, refine it, because rarely are you perfecting it on recipe one, batch one. So
sure. Are you do some of the decisions, for your staggering process there involve, where you think a certain hop may express a little bit better, whether that's Whirlpool or dry hop or, et cetera?
Yeah, it really depends.
Are there certain hops that you find you want to boost a little bit more in the dry hop, but they maybe don't do as well in the Whirlpool, versus those that really need some of that heat in the Whirlpool, and you might, boost them up there and bring them back down a little bit in the dry hop?
Yeah. I would say certain hops Mosaic is amazing in every edition. I mean, you can do a 90-minute with Mosaic and get an awesome beer. But I find
Let's try. Let's make a 90-minute edition Mosaic beer. And
we have a triple IPA with all Mosaic, all Cryo Mosaic. There is a 60 or 90-minute edition.
Yeah,
so.
Nice. It gets an inordinate amount of Cryo Mosaic, but this beer is dangerous.
Cryo Mosaic at 90 minutes. Oh man,
it gets. It reads at, although I think we've cut it back a little, but the initial recipe read at about 130 IBUs, which after 100, I don't even think the human palate can register that. but it drinks.
Sounds awesome.
It drinks less bitter than a 70 IBU. It's all red candy and mango flavors, and it's so incredibly well balanced, and it's phenomenal. I mean, if we could make it more, we would, but we like that rarity, that exclusivity, and it's also
a crazy expensive beer to make.
That is a fact.
Yeah. We get to make like half as much volume as we normally do while maxing out everything in our brew house. So yeah.
And then there's that ceiling of people really will pay for a 4-pack of even of a triple IPA. Although I saw that Arizona Wilderness was selling some $30 4-packs yesterday, and like that is amazing. But to try to get again, rather than just losing money on a triple IPA to make customers happier.
And we try to be competitive with our pricing while not gouging and simultaneously not undercutting everybody else so much that we look like the bad guys. Like, here's what we think it's worth compared to what we know people will pay for it.
Sure.
Because, brewers in the industry could sink or swim based on what we price our product at. And if people really knew what went into it most of the time, then, it would cost a lot more, I'm sure.
Not that this needs to be a business conversation. Sorry for sidelining there. Just to say that, I think everybody listening understands you don't make it that often just because it's probably not a profitable beer at all.
And most of it just gets kegged, sell it across the bar, and then you can do okay. But once you start packaging it, then it gets a little pricey. Sure.
Well, let me back up to that other question. Are there some of those hops that you definitely find work better in that whirlpool or hot side versus that dry hop, and do you rebalance based on those? Are there any others that stand out for you?
I mean, it's so, I would say, I feel like I've been using the words interchangeably on accident too often, but it's so subjective with what you want out of it. I mean, let's take Nelson and Strata in the hot side can be very similar with how dank and kind of resinous they can be. But if you use Nelson right, it'll taste like like Nelson Sauvin, like Sauvignon Blanc, grapes. And, whereas if you throw both of those into the dry hop, it's wildly different in what you get. And so it's all about what you want out of it. And, each hop has
what do you like getting out of it, and how do you find the best way to use it?
So like for Nelson, more often than not, I do like a little bit of that dankness from it because, I am all about balance with any of the recipes that I write. I don't like anything being too much of anything, whether it's sweet or hoppy. I want there to be, it's chasing that high of, I want to make the beer that will please almost every single palate. And, you're
looking to build it cohesively so that it hangs together as its own thing and not just with these identifiable, particular elements there.
It's, this is a Nelson beer. It's, this is a beer that's great. It has Nelson in it, but it's not a, defined by one ingredient. It's a Nelson and Belma pale ale, but it's got, this and this in it, these malts at these temperatures. And, I really enjoy those types of hops, but also I am kind of old school with hops in regards to like Willamette. Willamette, I love. I mean, I'm probably one of 12 people that have ever uttered those words. But
what do you love about it, and how do you find ways to work that into the recipes that you write?
So I usually write the malty recipes for example, billet brown ale. That's actually one that's made. It was a sub 90. I think it was like an 88 or 87 in the magazine. But that was,
what do those judges know?
Yeah, right. They don't know nothing. But that was initially a homebrew recipe for Arizona Society of Homebrewers. I wrote actually while I was working at my previous brewery at BJ's. I worked as a professional brewer and then picked up home brewing. I did it totally backwards, but I went into it having a lot of knowledge and good practices to start with instead of, well, on my homebrew setup, I do this. And, I made a batch of brown ale, English brown ale. It had 4 different hops in it and like 7 different malts in it. And, to this day, I'll get flack from him, but it's, it's definitely overly complicated, but at the same time, I pick up everything I wanted to get from it. And it's one of those that, like for our downtown Mesa tap room, that clientele, they like the malty stuff.
Sure.
They're the older crowd, kind of old school. They like those.
There's still lots of space in craft beer for
absolutely
for these styles, and there are consumers for them, even if they're not the coolest, hippest things.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean,
when we think they go away, they don't go away. I mean,
Yeah.
our coffee stout is still, even in Arizona, it's still one of our better selling beers. There's so many of them.
Yeah.
Like, why this one and not that one?
I love a good brown ale. So in that sense, we shouldn't let these things die, and we should continue to pull it. Anyway, that's a whole nother subject there.
Yeah, right. But
But Willamette.
Yeah, but from that one, I mean, yeah, like Willamette, Crystal, Nugget. I used Cryo Columbus for a bit while we had it in the building. That was just a bittering edition. But, all of those earthy...
I've heard a lot of brewers talk about that Cryo Columbus. Yeah.
It's great for... it's great for bittering. I'm sure that's a little sacrilegious, but it definitely has some other characteristics that don't always get amplified in a lot of recipes. But yeah, I mean, Willamette, Crystal, Nugget, those just like American, almost old world, just kind of old school hops that get, in my opinion, you don't see a lot anymore.
Are you mixing any of those into your IPAs?
Not yet, but I was listening to one of the recent podcasts, and they were talking about how they're kind of mixing in some of these older idea hops with some newer stuff. And I mean, kind of makes me want to brew up a batch and just start messing around again. I mean,
it was Josh and Marble that was talking about that, right? And at the same time, I mean, that's not a new thing. I mean, I've heard brewers even talking about that in the scope of hazy IPA years ago. Like, how do we find a way into some of these fruitier flavors, but still ground them, with this connection and the things that people are expecting out of it? And so,
yeah, I think it's fun. I mean, I just think, it's something that we would like to play around with. I mean, next time we use a flowable and like saws or something. Get weird.
Yeah, with my brown recipe, we settled where it's at. I mean, I would have dry hopped it just because I came from, like I said, I came from BJ's. They dry hop their brown ale. I mean, it's with Willamette, but they dry hop it.
Sure.
And, I was like, I wonder what I could get out of that. But that was
just told him no.
Yeah, that was the foot down moment. So yeah, I'm like, all right, well, this is still pretty good.
What is the craziest thing that Gully has let you get away with, Andrew?
Probably Lieutenant Champ. I would say that one's a ridiculous amount of hops. That one is, I'm looking at the recipe right now. For Whirlpool, it's got 11 pounds of T90 and 5.5 pounds of Cryo just for Whirlpool, and then equal parts of those same hops for dry hop. So you're looking at a bag and a half Whirlpool edition of essentially, really you're looking at 2.5 of T90 equivalent just for Whirlpool in a 10 barrel. And then the same amount for dry hop, which is interesting to get into a 10 or 20 barrel on top of the ladder where you'll hand me a bag and I'll just huck that one down and grab the next one before it blows up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that or With our dynamic here and what we like to do, I mean, there are recipes where, if anything, it's me kind of teasing Gully, like, what, are you scared? Let's do it. Like with some of the, I mean, we did a gummy bear beer with one of Gully's old coworkers and friends. He started a tap room, and he used to make like a homebrew recipe, gummy bear blonde. And he'd just take like a pint glass for his 5-gallon homebrew setup full of gummy bears and rip that into the kettle or into the boil. And we did the equivalent, but with 10 barrels. So it was a good amount of gummy bears. And
sure,
I mean, previously we did a gummy shark hazy.
Okay.
And we ordered a bunch of gummy shark gummies. And,
we like to keep it interesting.
Yeah.
We've done chocolate hazy.
We did a hazy IPA that tastes like chocolate.
How do you get gummy sharks to convey in a beer? Does it work?
You melt a bunch of gummy sharks.
You melt a bunch of them, and
we did
you
use
get
a little bit of vanilla. We did sneak a little bit of vanilla back in there just to get that gummy shark.
Sure.
And the hops helped. I think with that, when we used any sort of berry, I think that had some Belma and like Belma Amarillo, something, anything where it's going to help to convey that.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was about 60 pounds. So we melted down, and then re-added that back into the boil.
That was just
Melted
hot
down
wort in a bucket. Just mixed it up.
Those gummy shark volatiles don't blow off hot side then.
Oh yeah,
right there. That's where you wanted them.
They got isomerized the way we needed them.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, is this what beer is?
Yeah, right.
No. We were just talking about brown ale. How did we start talking about gummy sharks?
But
man, this conversation just took a turn.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. No, we were
doing so well before that.
Yeah.
We try to do the traditional stuff to prove people we can in fact know what we're doing, and then all right, it's been long enough. Let's do something wild.
Sure. Well, let's pull out here and look at a big picture. What at this point, 2016, 8 years into 12 West, you guys our judges have loved the beers you all have made. You've won some other awards for them too. Here you are at the most amazing homebrew setup that exists out there that I've seen so far. I mean, we could probably argue that some of the German, European brewers where their homes are adjacent to or attached to breweries, they may be able to rival this in terms of homes.
Absolutely.
But this is in that sense, very much in the European traditions.
Yeah, that's what we're going for.
Yeah. So you've got this here. You've got a couple of tap rooms. What's next for 12 West? What do you hope to accomplish in the next 5 years?
Well, the plan right now is we've kind of been building it. We've bought some land out about 3 miles from here down the road. I think we're up 5 acres now on the golf course up the road. We're working on building a 20,000 square foot production facility.
Wow.
We actually bought Uinta's 40-barrel brew house that they were moving out of their Santa Rosa system, so we actually picked that up from them. It's probably been a year now, maybe even a little more than that, but we've bought that system from them. So hopefully in the next couple years we'll at least get the ground broken at the new spot.
Couple years. That's your
It's been a long 7 years that we've been trying to figure out how to get the brewery where it's more accessible to people, so they can see the stainless and smell the smells and get it out of this awesome garage, but at least get it in front of the people. So that's the plan, is to get this place built. But I also smart enough to know that I'm not going to hold my breath either right this second.
It's an ongoing
so
project.
It's an ongoing process. And it's been going on for a while. It's always kind of fun building it, like the dream of it, and building it out and seeing what we can do.
Sure. I hope you put a pool in there because I mean, this is a pretty killer feature. Modern times, eat your heart out, right? They built a tap room with a adjacent pool. Of course, that thing exploded, but but you have an actual pool right here.
Yeah. We'll have to get that penciled into the blueprints.
I mean, just do it for all of us. Yeah. Are there any beers that are hot in your horizon to make?
Well, I think right now we have our pre-prohibition lager. It's lagering right now. It's kind of a fun one. Again, just pretty simple corn. So I can't remember what the hops are in that one. Laurel, maybe.
It's Crystal.
But yeah, just a pretty simple one. I mean, right now we're kind of just making a bunch of lagers, trying to keep it, just have some fun with those. And
from gummy sharks back to lagers again.
Yeah.
Now
we only have 12 beers or 12 taps available for us most of the time in our tap rooms. Yeah. So we have 6 core beers, so we can only really play around with the other 6.
Sure.
So we like to at least have fun with those as much as we can. And
Cool. Is there anything? Are there any big goals, things you really want to tackle in the next couple of years? What's in your dream? What would you love to achieve?
I mean, I'm like we kind of talked about earlier. I'm very competitive. I want as many, medals and awards as we can win. To be totally honest, I'll take all of those, as much, accolades. It's always it's very flattering to hear that kind of stuff. Like it never really gets old winning that kind of stuff. And, like we were talking about also competing with our friends, like the guys at Wilderness or, any of those local breweries.
Friendly competition.
All tides rise all ships kind of deal. Like, they're doing good, then I want to do good because I want to, be on their playing field. So I think that's really the big thing, is just trying to stay, competitive, trying to win some of those things. And yeah.
That actually helps answer a question that we raised on the last episode of the podcast with Arizona Wilderness. Like, why is there a cluster of Best in Beer winners here in Gilbert Mesa, Arizona? And that kind of competition of wanting to, push each other creatively and, and also earn that kind of respect at a national level is certainly something that you all share.
Yeah.
And that kind of, push and pull is ultimately a good and healthy thing for craft beer. And I think that's a good note to bring this to a close. Choose G&D Chillers on your next expansion or brewery startup and receive 1 free year of remote control and monitoring. ProBrew's engineering team prides itself on providing true customized turnkey solutions. Old Orchard is the go-to source for fruit-forward ingredients for some of the biggest names in the craft brewing landscape. Omega Yeast's Diacetyl Knockout series is comprised of 8 familiar yeast strains engineered to knock out the formation of diacetyl before it starts. ABS Commercial are proud to offer brewhouses, tanks, keg washers, and preventative maintenance parts to brewers across the country. Secure your brewery accelerator spot now at breweryworkshop.com. SS Brewtech is dedicated to an engineering-first approach to brewery equipment, empowers R&D at some of the world's greatest breweries, and build consistency with a reverse osmosis system from uswatersystems.com. If you've enjoyed this episode, go to beerandbrewing.com. Click on that subscribe button if you haven't yet. And of course, if you're a subscriber, go dig back into that Best in Beer issue and check out the recipe for 12 West Radial Spines, one of our top 20 beers, our best 20 beers in 2023. A remarkable accomplishment for you all. Congratulations, and thanks for talking to me on the podcast. If people want to learn more about 12 West, where do they find you?
Pretty much in the normal social media things, 12westbrewing.com. I think it's... What's
the Instagram? Yeah, what's the Instagram? It's 12 West Brewing _ Gilbert or downtown for our Instagram handles, although you'll be able to find those through our website, 12westbrewing.com. If you're in the Valley, we are at where we get our namesake, 12 West Main Street in Mesa, Arizona, as well as in Barn 1 in Agritopia and Gilbert on Higley and Ray. That was our initial tap room, and now we're up to 2. Downtown Mesa has our full restaurant, liquor, wine, beer, you name it, you can get it there.
Cool. It's a shame people can't see what I'm seeing right now. Yeah, this little action sports, paradise and swimming pool and pad here in this coolest brewery. But maybe I'll grab a couple pictures before I go. We'll put them up on the podcast post. I mean, it's pretty awesome. Great beers. You all just started sending to us. Came out of nowhere, and obviously our judges were super impressed, and we can kind of see why. I love this dedication to making great beers. Thanks for talking to me about how you brew them.
Yeah,
Cheers.
thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.